Everybody, what's going on? Fabian for Liberty. FabianForLiberty.com is my website. Wanted to comment on the latest with Greece and specifically talk about the bail-in, this notion of a bail-in. What is it really for those of you that don't understand it, and what's going to happen when they do bail-ins here in America? I had this conversation with a lot of people actually over the weekend, and I find it very interesting that in the U.S., for example, if you look at the headlines, the news is, Donald Trump thinks all Mexicans are racist, or not racist, rapists. Also, they continue to just talk about absolutely meaningless storylines when really the Greek referendum vote, the Greek crisis, the Greek potential fallout from the EU, I think are some of the biggest headlines probably of the last, certainly of the 21st century, because what it means for the future of the EU, what it means for the future of the globalists and the Keynesians that want to, in essence, create a more centralized power structure, it makes their plans and their ideas obviously very, very shaky. Unfortunately, these are the people that have tremendous influence over the world, and so I see them actually doubling down on these failed policies. In fact, the Keynesian economists, which are, I would pretty much say, are mostly left-wing type economists, they want actually more action by the EU. They want more money printing. They want more intervention to make sure and ensure that Greece does not leave the EU. Clearly, this has failed. In fact, it's failed here at home, where money printing, low interest rates, and all kinds of money manipulation have not led to a market recovery. It's completely failed in the EU as well, and with the IMF and with the ECB, basically printing money, trying to save countries like Greece from a completely economic horror show. I mean, it's completely unsustainable, and ultimately no amount of money printing will save Greece, because Greece is really just the tip of the iceberg. Like any iceberg, you only see 5% of it, 95% of it lies underwater. And in this case, with that analogy, the 95% is the derivatives that stem from the billions, if not trillions of dollars that have been lent through the EU to a lot of these failed states. Greece alone has $220 billion. And if you think about this, think of the fallout with the EU over just Greece. Greece accounts for less than 2% of all economic output for the EU. They have less than 2% of the population for the EU, yet markets today are tumbling, and the euro has fallen, and it's a complete crisis. And if the contagion spreads, which the ECB promises it won't, which that means it will, if it does spread, what happens to countries like Italy and to countries like Portugal and countries like Ireland and countries like Spain that have larger economies than Greece? What does that mean, not only to the euro, what's it mean to the EU, and what's it mean geopolitically with Russia and China on the creeping up? Now, I've told you that if ultimately Greece leaves the EU, which is a possibility, it's only because they have a deal with the Russians and the Chinese. Already there's conversation that a lot of the ports, well, Greece's largest port, is in the works to be sold to China, but also its naval bases that haven't been used really by the U.S. in some time, that they're going to be leased out to the Russians now. And here we see Russia continuing to grow influentially all over the world, as they also have bases in Cuba now, and supposedly, if Raul Castro is successful in getting back Guantanamo Bay, which I think Obama is willing to give to him under these new opening of relations, it's very possible that they'll give Guantanamo Bay to the Russians as well. So I've always said, look, it all goes down to economics. Geopolitics is absolutely a major part of what's happening economically as well. But let me just take a minute and talk about the bail-in, because I think the bail-in is really important. We saw bail-ins happen in Cyprus, and in Greece, basically the rumor is that any depositor with over 8,000 euros is going to take a 30% haircut in order for the banks to recapitalize. Now, again, people think here at home that would never, ever, ever happen. It's interesting because, look, the people that are the elites in Greece, they already have their money in Swiss bank accounts, and it's not even in Greek banks, right? So they saw this coming, just like the elites here at home. Obama, for example, in his Organizing for America, I understand that he keeps his money in Dubai. The elites don't keep their money in U.S. banks, and if they do, it's likely just a very little amount of cash, with most of their assets being held in overseas banks or in blind trusts that are held in other countries. So they're not really concerned about the bail-in idea. In fact, that's why they will openly come out and support a bail-in idea, saying, look, this is what we need to save the country, but it ultimately will result in the middle class and, people with the millionaire class, which are typically small business owners, because 95% of millionaires in this country are self-made, taking their money, taking 30, 40, 50% of their money to pay for the insanity of the big Wall Street banks and of the collectivists that continue to try these central planning ideas that are just complete and utter failures. Now, look, I still hold out based on the talks that I've been having with some people that I know that have their ear to the ground close to what's going on in Greece, that Greece will stay in the euro short term, but ultimately the euro will fail for these reasons, because the ECB and all these other the Troika, as they're known, the EU, IMF, and ECB, you cannot continue to solve a debt problem with more debt. It's just not going to work. They think it's going to work, but it's not. And we clearly see that here in the United States, where GDP output, they say, well, let's continue to, have more and more debt. That'll help restart the economy. We're in 2015, and economic output in the United States is to 2011 levels. So it's just so obvious it doesn't work. And that's why, I posted this great, in my opinion, it was great. I posted this blog post to my website, GER2015.com, GER standing for the Global Economic Reset. And it talked about how even in light of economic crises, I mentioned a company in Greece that's actually doing extremely well, that provides a tremendous value. And I think the future is for the value makers. So by no means, is this crisis, even when it comes to the United States, spell the end of financial markets or the end of markets in general. All right, last quick thing is this week we are officially launching my Resourceful Real Estate Academy 2.0. If you're interested, you can click on the link down below to opt in. It's a 4-part video series for free that pretty much gives you the 4 new rules of real estate. As I've told you, one of my biggest predictions was real estate prices surpassing 2006, 2007 levels. AP report reported a few weeks ago that we're at that level now. There's a few more years of this, I believe at least a year of this. And I think we're on the cusp of things going really insane. And that means a lot of potential for educated investors now, but more importantly, when this house of cards does come to a crash, I believe it'll be the biggest buying opportunity of all time. That's not just me saying that. That's a lot of other people out there like Mike Maloney, Peter Schiff, and many others that believe that it'll be a tremendous time to gobble up hard assets, including real estate, when the markets do crash. I'm Fabian for Liberty. I'd love to hear your comments on this. Thank you for watching. I'm out.